Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. It's Gemini Brett. It's been a while. I have been working away at a presentation that I'll be offering this Thursday, hosted by Washington State Astrological Association, which is awesome. It's like the first place I ever gave a pro astrology talk. Well, that's not true. I've sat on many yoga studio floors and worked many music festivals, which is something I just love. But WASA was the first astrological org that I spoke for a couple of years back. And so it's cool to be going back to Seattle, my old home place, and my old home astrological association, if you will, for a talk that is happening this Thursday. Let me show you an image. I want to show you a bunch of images from there because I want to get into Antiscia or Antiscia because of something that's happening in the morning skies right now. It's just brilliant. But anyway, this is the talk, Turning the Wheel with Annual Profections, which is happening this Thursday, October 8th, 2020, 7:30 p.m. So you can go to WASA's website, which is WA for Washington, waastrologers.org. Maybe at the end of this thing, I'll go over there so you can see where you can sign up. There's a lecture on Thursday Eve, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, and then a workshop of vocational signatures in the Nativity that's happening on Saturday, Saturn's Day, October 10th, at like 10:30 in the morning. We'll go to the website together and have a peek. But for now, let's well, I'm not going to speak about it so much today, but one of the principal teachings of this presentation is about annual perfections and Time Lords. So the homes of the Time Lords, this will kind of set up where I want to go with you today to speak about Venus and Mars in a very sacred astronomical alignment right now. So the homes of the Time Lords, right? This is about signs or traditional planetary domiciles, or where planets make their residences in the signs of the zodiac. So it's not about houses per se, although the signs were called domiciles, and the tropical signs were known as the terrestrial houses. So in that sense it is, but this is a signs thing, right? So the sun is said to rule the sign of Leo, and the moon his neighbor in Cancer. And from there, we branch out according to the Chaldean order, planetary speed. So Mercury, the next quickest, and then Venus, and then Mars, and Jupiter, and Saturn. So these Mars glyphs here in Aries and Scorpio might look strange to you. It's the old glyph, and I love it because it's the polarity of Venus. Venus, the circle of spirit over the cross of matter, and Mars, the cross of matter over the circle of spirit. So we can see in this old traditional planetary domicile map how Venus and Mars are polarities, not only in these glyphs, but how they live opposite one another. And that's true also for Mercury and Jupiter, and for Saturn and the lights. And so I really love this kind of balanced image of the old rulership assignments, if you will. I don't love that word, but there you go, right? That every planet has a nocturnal and a diurnal sign. And besides the moon, who's said to be purely of the night and sun of the day, and that they have these kind of pairing partners, if you will, these planets that are opposite their places. But the opposition itself was known as the Saturnian aspect. And this is why. Saturn is opposite the lights. For Jupiter, it's the trine, right? Because Pisces, traditionally ruled by Jupiter, is trine Cancer, the moon, and Sagittarius, Jupiter, trine Leo, the sun. Similarly, we find that the square aspect is associated with the planet Mars, and the sextile with Venus. You could say the semi-sextile neighboring signs is Mercury, but traditionally that's not an aspect at all, which is a really important thing in traditional astrology. And it's something I'll be exploring in this talk this week, because when I get into annual profections and we look, for example, at an annual or a monthly Time Lord, we really want to tune into the conditions of that planet in the nativity, and how that planet that's ruling the profected sign of the year, how that planet aspects that sign or doesn't aspect that sign at all. And this really comes alive in the traditional doctrine that relates signs, planets, and more. I mean, truthfully, that comes from the THEMA MUNDI, the so-called chart of the world, the chart of the world's soul, which looks like this. The moon's at 15 degrees Cancer and the sun 15 Leo and Mercury 15 Virgo and that, right? And this is where these aspect sets come from. It's interesting to see the opposition here. It's really the moon Saturn opposition, whereas the Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury aspects are all drawn from the sun. But again, we can reflect here because all planets should have a diurnal and a nocturnal sign. And so we'll see those aspects reflected as well. So much of traditional astrological theory regarding planets, signs, aspects comes from this Thema Mundi, which it said was composed by Hermes himself. All right, so I like seeing it this way, these ladders, right? And we see there this kind of symmetry between the diurnal and nocturnal signs of Saturn, which are Aquarius and Capricorn, of Jupiter, which are Sagittarius and Pisces, of Mars, which are Aries and Scorpio, of Venus, which are Libra and Taurus, of Mercury, which are Gemini and Virgo. For the moon and the sun, right, they're said to each only live in one of these signs, Cancer and Leo respectively, but those signs are said to be like in girding. It's an old term that's very interesting. Robert Hand told me that basically derives from the chariot races because, for example, whoever's driving the Scorpio chariot is going to wear the same girdle, the girdle that has Mars on it, as the Aries chariot driver, right? And there's kind of this connection between Cancer and Leo, that those signs, just like Gemini and Virgo, or Taurus and Libra, basically the two signs that are said to be ruled by the same planet, they're called like and girding. And that same thing was suggested to be true between the signs of Cancer and Leo. I think that's really important, and it tells us something that we've kind of lost in our modern approach. Anyway, I usually draw this thing this way when I'm teaching it to students or whatever. It's interesting because you can see on the left, it has Taurus at the ascendant if we want to get that perfect stack, right? But we're so used to speaking about, this is the natural zodiac, Aries at the ascendant, which is a very astronomical thing. The truth is Aries is zero. Aries is due east from the center of the earth where we are all connected. And by the way, this isn't like, I should take the planets away because that's not really going to be a planetary thing, but it's a very astronomical thing. And this brings me to what I want to share with you today about a very sacred astronomical relation that's forming between Venus and Mars. It's really been lighting up the morning skies and just been inspiring me to not only wake up early, which is happening because I'm building this presentation anyway, but to just get out and get my feet in the soil and spend some time because, just at the edges of my periphery, I have Mars on one side and Venus on the other, and they're together surrounding this sacred hoop. So I'm going to bring you there, but let's talk about Antiscia first. Yeah, Antiscia is what we usually say. I was corrected by a Greek friend some time ago. So she's like, what are you saying? It's Antiscia. What? Oh, Antiscia, right? So skia is Greek for shadow. And it's a really interesting map. You'll see that in a couple of cases, right? And the cases are the fixed signs like Scorpio and Aquarius. These signs are said to be Antiscia. I'm going to use that pronunciation. It's easier for me. And Taurus and Leo are said to be Antiscia one another. Okay. So, I mean, these are signs that are square to one another, right? But these other signs, these other antiscion pairs, Libra and Pisces, and Aries and Virgo, or Sagittarius and Capricorn, and Gemini and Cancer, they're in conjunct. So let's dig into that a little bit. I want to show you there's Antiscia and there's also contra Antiscia. I'll speak a little bit more about what they are in just a moment. But let's tune back into this thing. Mostly because I don't want to change the order of my slides. They're taking me forever to build. But, you know, these are the traditional planetary domiciles here shown now with 0 Aries at the, you know, ascendant, if you will. We draw this chart often to speak about a kind of a momentless thing or a moment that describes all places of Earth, you know, taking it out of just some particular location, a specific ascendant. And some classical astrologers argue that we should put Cancer on the left because that's the ascendant of the world soul chart. But the truth is, it's only when 0 Aries or 0 Libra rise, the equinox points, when you get a perfect cross of matter like this. And so the Placidus and Porphyry and Campanus and Regiomontanus, like all the quadrant house systems and equal house system will agree with the whole sign cosmology only twice a day, everywhere on Earth when 0 Aries or 0 Libra rise. There's something to be said about that. And if you know my work, then you know about the directional zodiac. And again, the truth is, and the reason is this, like Earth's northern pole is leaning in every moment forever and ever and ever towards the 0 degree Cancer point of the ecliptic, the orbital plane. Always. Like that's the astronomy of the tropical zodiac. It is tied to Gaia's spine or the world tree, right? Our rotational axis, the axis of day, which defines the directions. So 0 Cancer is the north point. When the sun is at that point here, then it's summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. When the sun is seen ingressing tropical Cancer, it shines directly above the Tropic of Cancer. See? Anyway, because 0 Cancer is here at the north and 0 Capricorn here at the south, always, 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 the other cardinal directions host the other cusps of the cardinal signs. Libra is west of the center of the Earth where we are all connected, and Aries, 0 Aries is east of the center of the Earth where we're all connected. So this point 0 Aries, it's like a global ascendant. Yeah, that's why we can track its precession through the constellations or the sidereal signs and discuss things like the turning of the ages and whatnot. That's been very principal to my work. If you want to explore that in depth, you'll find at GeminiBrett.com on the offerings page a journey that's called The Sun on the Cross, the Turning of the Ages. Or 2020 Revelations, another place where I get into the sacred hoop, which is where I want to go with you now. Anyway, so I like drawing this with Taurus on the left because you get that balance here, right? It's kind of shifted diagonally, shifted 30 degrees. But you know, the way that these things are typically taught these days and age are like, you know, Uranus and Pluto and Neptune come into the scene, right? So like the modern planetary rulership mix. As long as I'm doing that, let me like update the Mars glyph too. All right. So are these the homes of the Time Lords? The question mark in the middle. Come to my talk on Thursday. You'll see what I mean by that. But you know, many modern astrologers will also then relate the planets not only with signs, but also with houses, right? In this thing that's typically described as the astrological alphabet. That, for example, the first is Aries, is Mars, and Mars is the first. And the second sign is Taurus, and that's ruled by Venus. So Venus, they'll say, is the natural ruler of the second house. And I'll let Deborah Holding address this. And this is a wonderful book I feel all astrologers should read, okay? Temples of the Sky, the houses. Although modern natal astrology allows a considerable exchange of meaning between houses and signs, the suggestion that houses derive their meanings from signs is clearly contradicted in traditional texts, where a much stronger distinction is readily apparent. At best, this theory is an oversimplification. At worst, it blurs the edges of two quite separate astrological tools, resulting in slack symbolism, so vague as to be of little practical use. That's a pretty challenging statement for, for a lot of astrologers who are really leaning on the idea of natural house rulerships and the alphabet, the astrological alphabet. And I've seen it work, and there's a lot of great astrologers who are using that. I don't want to say what's right or what's wrong. But I do want to tune you into, an older image of associations of planets and houses. Many of you will know about planetary rejoicing by house. So the traditional look is very differently. I mean, like many modern astrologers, for example, will say, well, the sun rules Leo and Leo is the fifth. And so the sun is the natural ruler of the fifth. But I mean, this is very disconnected from an astronomical experience, right? Because the fifth house is below the ground. So to say that the sun prefers the fifth is to say that the sun prefers nighttime. The sun prefers to not be seen, which is a pretty strange thing, right? So, I mean, from this place during the daily motion, right? The earth spinning here on earth, we experience it as the sky spinning, rising in the east and reaching at the midheaven and resting in the west. I mean, the fifth house is even, it's about, 8 to 10 p.m. The sun's still on its way down to the roots where we begin time in the middle of the night, and then sunrise and then sun reach. And traditionally, the sun is set to joy in the ninth house, which astronomically makes a lot more sense, right? I mean, this is just the bright time of day, right? I mean, so we could say, why not the sun at the angular house in the 10th, which I think is a really good question. But it might be that this is also where the sun, even though it's right at the midheaven, the cusp of the ninth and the 10th house is the height of the light for the day. Now the sun's finished its daily climb, right? And we all feel joy once we get to the top of a mountain we're climbing. That's one thing I think about it. But if you just go outside when the sun's in the ninth, you can feel it's an incredibly solar time of day, right? Anyway, opposite the ninth, the third is said to be the house of the goddess, the joy of the moon. And Jupiter is said to joy in the 11th, Saturn in the 12th. And now you can see above the horizon these planets, Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, that traditionally are known to be those of the day sect. And the planets of the night sect reside below the horizon. The sect light is the moon. And then we find Mars here enjoying in the 6th and Venus in the 5th. So those are the three planets that are associated with the night sect. Chris Brennan's done an amazing job, like cracking the code of this thing, of the planetary joys and relationships, not only to sect, but also to triplicity, those are the trigons, to perhaps the introduction of the elements into astrology. It's usually taught these days, like many teachers start with the elements, right? The fire is Aries and Leo and Sag and Taurus and Virgo and Capricorn of the earth, etc. That elemental happening was not like the elemental association of the signs is not at the beginning of Hellenistic astrology. It was introduced, first evidence of it in Vedas Valens in the 1st century. So that doesn't mean there wasn't some connection before then, but it wasn't written. So anyway, check out Chris Brennan's work. I think HellenisticaStrology.com. I should know that because I want to send people there for this talk. Anyway, when I'm in my talk, I'll show a link to an article. Just check out Chris Brennan's article on the planetary joys, and you'll get a pretty cool download regarding traditional astrology and the association between signs and houses. And it's very different than, planets and houses, which is very different than the domiciles of the planets and the signs. All right. So where's Mercury in this mix? Well, Mercury can go either way. So he rejoices in the 1st. or she. And that's because in whole sign astrology, the ancient house system, the ascendant is not necessarily the cusp of the first house. I mean, it's usually not. It's going to be found somewhere within the first sign. So the image, the cool thing there is that, you know, part of the first sign is going to be above the horizon and part below. Like I'm 10 Gemini rising, so there's 10 degrees of Gemini up in the light and 20 down below the horizon. And so that's like Mercury, the liminal one, right? Who's said to either be a day or a night planet, depending on some amazing astronomical happenings during the time of the nativity. Anyway, I kind of digress. The thing I want to show here, and I sadly don't have the lines drawn, but is the aspects between the first house and the houses where we find the benefics, okay? So to Jupiter here in the 11th, that's a sextile. To Venus here in the 5th, that's a trine. And to the sun in the 9th, also a trine. And also the moon sextile, right? So we get the lights and the so-called benefics, Jupiter and Venus, in trine and sextile relationship from the first. Now, traditionally, every sign casts 7 rays. It can only see 7 of the other signs. Like, you know, I can't see how many fingers my neighbor's holding up. Doesn't mean I can't like smell their barbecue over there, you know, and like have some kind of, you know, extra visionary experience, right? Aspect means to see, but there are 4 signs that each of the signs is said to be blind to or inconjunct to. So a planet can see the opposition. In fact, it's kind of like a polarity pairing partner, long story. It trines into, you know, from the 1st into the 9th and the 5th, sextiles to the 11th and the 3rd, but is blind to its neighbors. So the 12th house, the 2nd house, and then also to the neighbors of the opposition, the quincunx signs, which are the 8th and the 6th. And just think about how much baggage there is, you know, especially in the traditional delineations of the 12th house of like hidden enemies and personal undoing, the 8th house of death, the 6th of illness, right? Somehow the 2nd seems to have gone off the hook, but I think it's more mysterious than we usually teach. And they do say the love of money is the root of all evil, right? So anyway, you'll see that Mars and Saturn are here in the so-called bad houses. And these 4 we connect to what's called a mystic rectangle. They're inconjunct. So we see this in the map of the signs too. And Antiscia traditionally is one of the astronomical things that can alleviate the aversion between signs that are said to be blind to one another, right? So like, let's go from Aries. Okay, Aries is opposite Libra, it's trine, Sagittarius, and Leo. It squares Capricorn and Cancer, right? So it's interesting, the square is the only traditional aspect, we often say Ptolemaic aspect, that will move from one polarity to the other, right? So like from the diurnal fire to the nocturnal earth or water, right? Capricorn and Cancer respectively, from Aries and Libra, right? Whereas the opposition, Aries to Libra, same polarity, diurnal. The trines, same polarity, in fact, same element, Sagittarius and Leo, both fire. And the sextiles, same polarity, from the fire of Aries to the air of Aquarius and Gemini, right? So the blind signs to Aries and also to Libra are said to be Pisces, Scorpio, and Virgo, and Taurus. It's a mystic rectangle, okay? But Antiscia can alleviate the aversion between signs like Aries and Virgo, because Aries and Virgo, though inconjunct, that's the quincunx, are Antiscia. Pisces and Libra, though inconjunct, Antiscia. Sagittarius and Capricorn, though inconjunct, right? Now that word in conjunct by modern astrologers is often reserved only for the quincunx, like Aries to Virgo or Aries to Scorpio. But traditionally, the in conjunct also describes neighboring signs. Yeah, so these days we'll often say like a semi-sextile. So Sag and Capricorn are said to be blind to one another, yet they're Antiscia, okay? And Gemini and Cancer said to be blind to one another, yet they're also Antiscia. If you notice, what we're doing here is we are reflecting about the solstice axis, okay? So 0 Cancer, June solstice, 0 Capricorn, December solstice. Now, really, solstice only describes when the sun is there, right? Importantly, these points are the tropics, the tropicos. The tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, named after the same thing, tropicos, as the tropical zodiac, the tropical signs. Tropicos is Greek for turnaround. These are the turning points. And I better leave that there for now. Oops, but we're going to go back. So, Antiscia, how to describe Antiscia? Antiscia, very importantly, because skia, again, Greek, it means shadow. So people often say, oh, well, these signs are like the Jungian kind of archetypal shadows of one another. Okay, cool. But actually, traditionally, it's very literal. Okay. So here we are in October time, today, the 6th. And in the Northern Hemisphere where I live, the sun is falling in the sky, right? It's just like the leaves are going to fall from the branches pretty soon. Many of them already have. But, you know, the sun reaches its highest height at summer solstice, right? Its highest height of the year. And that is the highest midday sun, right? Sun at the midheaven. And therefore, the highest sun casts the shortest shadow, right? Put a stick in the ground or stand straight. You are your own gnomon, right? At summer solstice, so June solstice for the northern hemisphere, so right, 0 Cancer sun for the northern hemisphere is the highest sun of the year and the shortest shadow. And from there, the sun every day, the midday sun is a little lower in the sky. Starts coming down really slowly, actually, through Cancer and Leo. In Virgo, it's starting to move much more quickly, right? And as the midday sun gets lower and lower and lower, the midday shadow gets longer and longer and longer until its longest length, okay, which is December solstice. Now, in the fall, the sun is very visibly falling rapidly at midday. So this is a really cool thing to do. We've got a pod of 5 and 6 year olds outside, right? And one thing they're learning besides, I guess, more standard curriculum is how to work the medicine wheel, like how to see the directions, how to follow the shadow of the gnomon as the sun moves from the east to the west, from rise to rest, And also they're starting to mark how long the midday shadow is. Right? So here in the Northern Hemisphere, the midday shadow points due north at midday. So they got that line, right? And they're going to see over the course of the next few weeks that the midday shadow is getting longer and longer quite rapidly. Anyway, so the longest midday shadow of the year is at winter solstice, right? Because that's the lowest midday sun. Super long shadow. And then it starts coming back as the sun begins its climb. The Capricorn goat climbs the mountain. I know that's a northern hemispheric thing. So if you're down under, so to speak, reverse this, okay? But look at the Gemini glyph, all right? For 6 months between winter solstice and summer solstice, the midday sun is getting higher, and then it stops and it starts coming down, okay? And you can see that with the midday shadow. It's much easier to see, actually, because the light is pretty blinding. By day, we tell time with a shadow. So the shadow gets longer until December solstice and then comes back. And see how during the Sagittarius month for the Northern Hemisphere, we're approaching December solstice, the shadow reaching its greatest length. And then for Capricorn, we're coming back, but in that same zone, right? So this is Antiscia, right? So like this, while Sag is, we're getting longer in our shadow. Capricorn, we bring it back, but it's in the same zone. And so these signs reflected about the solstice axis, Sagittarius and Capricorn, are Antiscia. And specifically, like 20 degrees Sagittarius, 10 degrees away from the solstice point, is Antiscia 10 degrees Capricorn. The antiscion, the pairs, will always add to 30. So 2 Sag is antiscion 28 Capricorn. 10 Scorpio with 20 Aquarius. 4 Pisces with 26 Libra. Yeah. 4 Virgo with 26 Aries. It's here. So 26 Aries is 26 days about, at least 26 degrees. If we're looking at where the sun, 26 degrees after equinox. And then 4 Virgo is 26 days before equinox, right on the northern side of the signs. And those days when they host the sun, whether we're 24 days after March equinox or 24 days before September equinox, the sun on those 2 days of the year will cast the same length of shadow at midday. It's just one's the shadow's getting shorter because the sun's getting higher, and one's the shadow's getting longer because the sun's getting lower at midday, but same shadow length, same course for the sun. And it's one of these things where if you have inconjunct planets in your nativity, like say Mars is in the sign of Virgo, and therefore Mars cannot see Aries because Virgo and Aries are quincunx, but there's this connection through Antiscia. Or right now we'll look at a chart. Venus was in Leo and was trine Aries Mars, and now Venus has moved into the sign of Virgo, breaking up that trine. Now they're in inconjunct signs, but they're Antiscia. Before I go there, let me show you contra Antiscia. And that's a reflection about the equinox axis. So this one's easier to describe with where planets arise on the horizon, and I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. But just know that Virgo and Libra are contra Antiscia, and the same thing, they'll always add to 30 the specific degrees. So like 4 degrees Virgo, excuse me. Let's do another one. 8 degrees Virgo is contra Antiscia, 22 degrees Libra. They're both 22 degrees from the equinox point, see? All right. Let me show you where you can sign up for this talk. I'm just realizing how much time this has taken, and I'm wondering if I'm going to reserve those slides for a workshop I'm giving next year, maybe. So look, WAAstrologers.org, WAAstrologers.org, or you can search for Washington State Astrologers Association, and you will find your way here. You can look at events, and you will see amongst the other amazing talks that WASA's hosting, like Wade Caves coming up. It's amazing. This is my talk, October 8th, 7:30 p.m. So that's this Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. Okay, this is Seattle, Washington time. And then the workshop is a 6-hour workshop. There'll be an hour break, so 5 hours of astrology. Your calling is calling vocational signatures in the natal chart. So you can read more about these things by clicking on those links. But to register for them, if you'd like to join us, and if you can't make it live, of course, you'll be sent a recording. So standard in our virtual times, isn't it? Head over to register here. And it's kind of a strange form, kind of old school. You go register now, and then you type in your name and your email. And so if you haven't been to a WASA talk before, you can do lecture first time guest. And then it's, I think for the first time, it's $10, right? You get to play the member rates. And you just type in Gemini Brett here. But And then if you want to do the workshop, you can do a workshop guest rate. You can actually do the early bird guest rate if you register now. Anytime before the talk on Thursday, you can do the early bird rate. It's going to be an awesome workshop. I'll kind of let the description there say what it is. All right, well, let's get into charts a bit. And let's go to the sky as well. So I'm going to open Stellarium. I'm going to show you a thing that I've been engaging with in the morning skies. It's just been so amazing. So this is right now in Richmond where I'm sitting. So I'm going to rewind time a bit, show you what I saw when I woke up this morning, went outside about 4:15 a.m. And one thing I saw was the moon just culminating here. The moon had just come into the sign of Gemini. And so in our day and age, that gateway between Taurus and Gemini is marked by the Pleiades, right? So that's a pretty amazing thing to see. Just go outside and see the moon with the Pleiades applying to Aldebaran here, the eye of the bull, which in our day and age is about 10 degrees tropical Gemini. And to just see that alignment is pretty cool. The star was about to rise when I rose. The Pleiades were right in the horizon. So it's always a special place for me to connect to the heavens. Hold on a second. Okay. Uranus, we can't see. Here's an asteroid Leto. I'm not sure. That's like, I need to dim this thing down a little bit. Maybe that's not it. Oh, here, I see. Okay. Let's get Leto out of the mix in this case. Anyway, but I did see a whole lot of Mars, and then I saw a whole lot of Venus, and then went back out like an hour later. It's before sunrise here. You know, it's starting to get a little bit light, but Mars is just so bright right now because Sun is opposite Mars, which means Earth is passing Mars by the middle of this about 2-month retrograde. You know, Mars stations retrograde and travels retrograde every time Earth passes, which happens about every 24 to 26 months. And it's just amazing to have this brilliant, bright red Mars right now. Here, it's been really smoky at times, which is not good, but it's kind of been fascinating to see the red-shifted sun or the red-shifted moon, or like Mars is kind of extra red. It's kind of intimidating, you know? Anyway, so here's Mars, and then Venus over here, who just recently, let me go back some days and I'll show you. She just recently crossed Regulus, the heart of the lion in the heavens, which in our day and age, and since October 2012, August 2012 actually, has marked the very beginning of tropical Virgo. All right. I'm going to go some days ahead. Let's see. This was this morning-ish. Here's Thursday. And the reason why I want to go there is because dig where the moon is now on the chart. She'll be about a, oops, in the third quarter phase at that time. All right, so we get this near half moon, almost. Still got a little curve. But why I wanted to go to that day is because that puts the moon right in the midst of this very powerful place of the heavens, which, see, if I dim the light, you can see how the Milky Way crosses here. So this is one of the galactic crosses. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, where it crosses the ecliptic, the plane of the Earth-Sun relationship. And for the most part, the solar system, as you can see, Mars here, and Moon particularly close at this time because right now one of the lunar nodes where the moon's course here, the circle of silver crosses the sun's course, the circle of gold. This is the north lunar node currently in the late degrees of tropical Gemini. So with moon close to that degree, she's very close to the ecliptic because the nodes are where the moon's path and the sun's path cross. And then this is like a galactic node here, which in our day and age, and this is this galactic alignment thing I'm often speaking about, is hosting the 0 degrees Cancer, the North Point. It's a very powerful, powerful thing. And so this winter hexagon, as the astronomers call these stars, Capella, Castor and Pollux, Procyon, Small Dog, Sirius, the big dog, brightest star of our sky, Regal, the foot of Orion. And the astronomers use Aldebaran here. Marks this place where the Milky Way galaxy crosses the ecliptic solar system. There's two of those. The other one's on the opposite side, which is the galactic center. So this is actually galactic anti-center, the galactic edge, looking like with our back to the galactic center out into intergalactic space. Okay. So this star here, Elnath, one of the horns of the bull, is often spoken as this kind of marker star, or El Hek is actually even closer to that gateway, right? Also the feet of the twins, Teshat, with these stars here. And very importantly, Orion's club, or this staff of Osiris, or the hand of the Hyman, or the hand of Time Man. There's so many different names have talked about Orion pointing to this place in the middle of this winter hexagon of stars that surrounds this silver gate. That's a term from a mystery tradition which suggests our souls come from that place. And that's something that's actually in resonance with the star mysteries of the Lakota people, who see this place of the heavens as the sacred hoop. And it's said to be where our souls come from. And then it said we'll walk the silver road or the spirit road when we die. That's the Milky Way, and go to someplace that sets in the southwest. That's the Golden Gate. That's the galactic center here, which in our day and age, and it's only like this every 26,000 years, hosts the South Point, 0 Capricorn. So this sacred hoop is an amazing thing. And right now, and I'm loving this image of Thursday morning, when that sacred hoop will feature the moon. As the moon moves every month from Gemini to Cancer, she crosses that north point. She crosses through the center of this sacred hoop where our souls come from, and the Anipi, the sweat lodge of the sky, where we will move back through to be purified. The head of the lion, as we see it in the west, is the fire pit that the stones are heated to bring into the Anipi, the sweat lodge. So here we see morning star, Venus, and I'm going to have to rewind. No, here's Mars, okay? So let's look at this chart. This is like 6 a.m. on Thursday, on October 8th. This is the morning of this talk that I will be giving. So, oh, here you go. I went 5:30 a.m. So moon just moving in through the middle of the sacred hoop, which is this huge place in the sky, and 0 Cancer is the middle of it, and it's also a solstice point, right? A tropicos. So it's the axis of Antiscia. But maybe I'll just move this through the minutes, and we'll bring 0 Cancer to the midheaven, because that'll help us see that reflection. Push that button a lot of times now. It's running away with me. I forgot that that's a thing. All right, here we go. So yeah, 5:59 a.m. on Thursday. This is where I am, right? But this is before the sun's risen. And this thing, it would look a lot more like this. But certainly visible. I probably won't see those lines or cartoons drawn in the sky. Let me show you the Western version again, because you might be familiar with these constellations, like Orion, one of the most familiar constellations, right? You will literally see the moon sitting up above Orion's outstretched arm. Now, this arm of Orion, it's like not such visible stars. You got to have game. But Betelgeuse, the shoulder of Orion, amazingly bright star, right? And Orion's belt, many of us know, and Regal's foot. So this is Aldebaran, one of the four marker stars of the heaven, Castor and Pollux, the heads of the twins, Sirius, the brightest star of the sky, which where I live is very low. Procyon, Capella, these are very bright stars. So to see the moon right in the middle, and then you can extend your arms and feel Mars on one side is very red and hot, and Venus on the other side is very blue and very cool, especially in Virgo now, you know? And, you know, if you feel that in your arms and feel that hoop in between with the moon just shining there, it's just gonna be powerful. And if you bring your arms down now, you just open up, you'll find that your periphery, which is about, it does about a trine of space. You'll have Mars very bright and Venus very bright on these two sides of the heavens. For the northern hemisphere, it's right eye with Mars and left eye with Venus. In the southern hemisphere, the opposite would be true. And Orion points his club towards the ground. And this very high moon, because this is just about 0 degrees Cancer, the highest point of the tropical zodiac in the northern hemisphere. Like, let me take this same moment and we'll just go to the southern hemisphere at the same longitude. And then I've got to turn around to where I would see these beings. So there's Orion pointing down, right? And Venus now on the right, and Mars on the left. Tale of two hemispheres we are. And now where are Venus and Mars? Okay, so Venus at 6.5 degrees Virgo, all right? Well, let's call that 7. 7 degrees Virgo is Antiscia, 23 degrees Aries. And you can see now that the solstice thing is here, do you see that parallel between Venus and Mars? Sun and Neptune about parallel too. That's actually happening more today. Let me go now, right? With the sun at 14 Libra, the Antiscia to 14 Libra is 16 Pisces. So I actually have to go back a few more days to show Sun, Neptune, Antiscia about here, which was October 3rd. And, you know, let's look at a contra. So Venus and the sun, for example, 10 degrees Virgo is contra 20 Libra. So they're 19 and 11. It's going to be more like this. And let's try this day, which is October 12th. I was considering speaking about Antiscia and contra Antiscia for this presentation because of this experience that I've been having in the sky. I was also thinking about maybe speaking about Mercury's maximum elongation. So this is a good thing when the sun sets right now, go spend some time in the west, because it's not every day that you can catch a trickster looking back at you. And that's happening now. Mercury's far enough from the sun that he's a visible evening star planet, where Venus is in morning star, and Mars just barely still on the morning star side, really at the midnight star thing, because Mars is rising at sunset and culminating in the middle of the night, setting at sunrise. So right now we are in a time where every visible planet is visible. So the most important thing I could say about that, wake up and look up. See you in space, y'all. Hope to see you at my talk on Thursday too. WAAstrologers.org to find out more about that. If you want to learn more about your constellations or your astronomy, your sacred astronomy, and add that to your astrological understanding, you can find me at GeminiBrett.com. See you in